All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started for the sake of time. So we have Jason Meek from University of North Florida and Jeff Briggs from North Greenville University. And their presentation will be promoting and encouraging impactful professional development, integrating faith and academic stewardship. So Jason, I'll let you go ahead and share your screen and you can take it away.
All right, thank you so much. Let me get this going real quick and we'll get this brought up. Okay, so really what we're talking about, I'm not sure, I'm having some PowerPoint issues, so this thing may jump ahead on us a little bit. I'll try to keep it going back. Hopefully it won't keep skipping ahead several slides, but basically what we're talking about today is professional development and looking at what that means, what that can mean, what we can do with that, and how we really can help not only ourselves, but certainly help others that we're involved with in engaging in impactful professional development. And all the while looking at the notion of faith integration as we connect to these points of significance. So really, just a few basic key goals that we have here really is hopefully going through the things we're going to talk about in the upcoming slides will give us a chance to examine impactful ways to promote, encourage, and document professional development activities, provide a forum for discussing and examining faith integration through professional development, and identify I think some really key concepts, mentorship and networking, to help assist in our professional development endeavors. So as we think about that, I'll get to the right slide in just a second. I'm not sure why it's jumping ahead so much, but ultimately what we're talking about here is professional development. And I think it's just important to think, I'm a professor of sport management at the University of North Florida in Jacksonville. So I'm coming from a secular university. I've been there for about 15 years. But with this, I've done a lot of work with professional development, and I really am just talking about from the perspective of being an educator here, particularly as I apply these concepts that we'll be talking about in professional development activities, because professional development is truly important. It's definitely a key part of academia, and it really can help educators in a variety of ways, including meeting desired pedagogical goals and connecting to various institutional goals. Academic accountability is so helpful because it can do a lot of beneficial things, including bolstering academic programs, providing great opportunities for educators, and very importantly, providing impactful opportunities for our students. And by engaging in meaningful professional involvement, this opens up the door for a lot of key points of connection and trying to enhance what it is that we do as educators and the goals that we have trying to reach others. So let me jump back here again. I'm not really sure why it's jumping ahead so much, but it's just something to think about. So really, what I'm really going to lay in on a lot in this discussion today is to think about the concept of how one size does not fit all when it comes to looking at the notion of professional development. The type and amount of professional development will vary from institution to institution. So at a conference like this, we have individuals that represent different characteristics, okay? We come from different types of institutions, different sizes, different institutional missions, our programs. We come from different academic disciplines, even some academic disciplines that are pretty similar and connected. There might be different nuances associated with that. And I'll talk a little more about that in some upcoming slides, kind of, just discussing that a little bit deeper and giving us some things to think about. And I'm hoping that when we get finished with some of the information that I'll be providing, we'll have an open forum where we can really kind of share some ideas, some experiences, and maybe look for some ways that we can help each other in looking at how to best engage in impactful professional development activities. So ultimately, when it's all said and done, as I said before, the type and amount of professional development can vary from institution to institution. There's a lot of nuances in place, and many of you can attest there's interesting factors at play when you're educators or administrators at faith-based institutions. Institutional expectations, what is being offered, there in regards to professional development can vary a lot, but hopefully the things that exist are able to align with institutional missions and visions. As it's said, sometimes some institutions are better equipped to help support professional development than others. And what I mean by that is, in talking with a lot of different educators and administrators, there's always stories to tell about what opportunities exist, what expectations are there for people to be involved, and in particular, what kind of resources are made available for educators in this sense to be able to engage in professional development endeavors. And, a lot of times that comes down to money. Is there money to support whatever that might be? Just getting to come to conferences such as C-Skills, for example, could be part of that discussion. Is there enough money to support travel if you're attending in person? Or is there even enough money to help offset the cost of signing up for a moderately priced virtual conference? Sometimes those things can be challenges to deal with. So from a Christian perspective, I think there's a lot of things that can be looked at in terms of professional development when looking at this from different roles of individuals that might be part of the makeup of certainly the organization, but the conference, but narrowing it on down to the people that are attending this very session. Okay. The opportunity to engage in a Christ-minded, Christ-focused professional development endeavor is able to help exemplify the notion of faith integration. Certainly, faculty members from Christian universities have often opportunities to make meaningful professional development involvement that ties to their faith, and hopefully is connecting to their institutional missions. But also for individuals that maybe aren't coming from Christian universities, Christian professors from secular institutions can also engage in these various meaningful professional development activities where connections to their faith can be a great opportunity. I know for me, for example, I love getting to do work with organizations like C-Skills and getting to do sessions such as this one, and I did one just a little earlier, and getting to talk about the impact of being able to integrate my faith with the work that I get to do. That's not always something that I get to do at my state university professor gig. But also, one of the things I'm really talking a lot about from a faculty perspective, and the things I've been talking about and the things I'll be getting into, but I also want to make a point real quick before we get any farther to just also throw out the notion that the things that we're talking about and will be talking about definitely have an administrative application as well. So I know some individuals hearing this may have different administrative roles. And as you think about professional development, it really can vary. And I'll talk more about this coming up, but it really can vary from the role that we're coming into things from. So for example, if somebody is a brand new college professor, they'll have some different perspectives on things than maybe somebody that's been doing this for 30 years. If you're a program director or a department chair, or an associate dean or a dean or a provost, you may have different perspectives than somebody that doesn't have administrative responsibilities, for example. We'll spend more time hitting on that in just a bit. So what I am going to talk to you about here, I'm going to, for just a bit, I'm going to give you some insight from my vantage point, as we talk about the notion of the academic discipline of sport management. Now, obviously, C Skills has a wide variety of different academic disciplines. That's part of its makeup. And so the things that I'm talking about and will be talking about certainly are applicable to other academic disciplines, but I'm just going to just kind of use some case in point examples of things as I'm talking about the discipline that I'm in. And also, Jeff Briggs, who wasn't able to make it, but the co-presenter on this, we come from a sport management background and we work in sport management education. So we're going to kind of hone in on that. So for example, in the academic discipline of sport management, for a little over a decade ago, they established COSMA, which is the Commission on Sport Management Accreditation. And during that time, that organization and that accrediting process has been able to do a lot of enhancements to the academic discipline of sport management. By thinking about the notion of things like accreditation, but what I want to focus on is accountability. Sport management is able to truly enhance. It can help ensure academic rigor. It can look for ways that educators are able to examine and enhance the quality of their instruction, their courses, and ultimately their academic programs. And as such, when looking at things like professional development, COSMA has made that a very key component and looking at the role that professional development has in seeing that professional or sport management educators are able to tie in and connect to and translate things that are of value in the educational process in sport management education. So by recognizing and encouraging these meaningful professional development opportunities, it gives us a lot of things to really think about moving forward. So jump back. Okay, so COSMA, they have various principles that are the guidelines that they have for meeting sport management accreditation. And as we talked about before, COSMA is very mindful that all institutions aren't the same. And COSMA as such recognizes that the type and amount of professional development is something that's going to vary from institution to institution, and therefore it needs to be aligned with institutional missions and visions. And what that's really saying is when I'm doing mentorship with younger faculty and newer faculty, if we're talking about things from our university's perspective, that's one of the things that we really want to understand. It's what is expected of you in general. What is expected of you to do the work that you should be doing that will help you be well viewed in your annual evaluations? What will get you ready for your third year review? What will get you ready to head towards tenure and promotion? And also thinking about bigger picture career goals, maybe beyond just the notion of tenure and promotion. If I'm talking to people at other universities about these things, there's other considerations that we can think about. And I'll give some cases and points coming up that will talk about some different institutional considerations. And like I said, hopefully towards the end, we'll have some time to maybe exchange some ideas and engage in some discussion on some different nuances and interesting characteristics tied to our own respective institutions. So for example, sticking with the theme of sport management, okay, going back to COSMA, if you were to go to the COSMA website and look up the accredited programs, and at the time I took this screen capture, there was 54 accredited programs in COSMA. And I just picked this as an example because, you know, if you go through there and you can see there's different universities in alphabetical order and they go from there. But when you're looking at these different institutions, there's different characteristics that make up who these schools are. And so, for example, you have different types of universities, and there's schools that are very large and there's schools that are very small, and there's public and there's private, and they're in different geographic locations. And then their programs, even they have different programs. Some have only a bachelor's degree, some might just have a master's, some might have a bachelor and master's in sport management. They might even have different names. Just looking at something here real quick: Bachelor of Science in Sport Management, Bachelor of Science in Sport Administration, Bachelor of Applied Arts in Sport Management, Bachelor of Business Administration, Bachelor of Science in Sport Leadership. Just looking at just the first few schools, you can see that there's a variety of different ways of even how they describe the programs. So with this, when we think about uh, the differences in institution types, okay, it really can vary. I'll use myself as an example, okay. Over the years, I've been doing this for about 20 years, I guess, and in that, during my time working full-time in sport management education, I have worked in I've been in a school of business, the College of Health, College of Education and Human Services, all the while teaching sport management. I've taught in programs that were called sport management, sport administration, sport leadership, sport and fitness management, and athletic administration. Even at the school I'm at now, we have a bachelor's in sport management, we have a MBA in sport management, we have a master's of ed leadership and athletic administration. That's just what we have at our school. Our program grew out of something that was sport leadership, that was an extension of an earlier physical education program we have. We don't have physical education at UNF anymore, but we have a bustling sport management program. But those are things that are just characteristics to think about. But a lot of times, those kind of characteristics really have a big influence on what the programs are, where they're coming from, and where they're going. So as you think about the different schools, different institutions, institutional missions, even on down to the location of the programs. And that's not just geographically, like I'm in the state of Florida, or I'm in the Southeast, or I'm in the Eastern United States, or whatever, but like, where are you actually housed? As I said before, I've been in the business school, the College of Health, and the College of Education at different schools and there was a lot of different aspects that made those distinct jobs different, even though they were all quote unquote sport management jobs. Where a school or where a program is housed at a given university or college can have a big influence. If you're in my discipline, if you're in the College of Business, it may vary than if you're in the College of Health. Sometimes you'll find that programs, you're housed where you're housed, and it may not vary that much in certain aspects, but other times it truly can. But all of those things are just things to think about. And right there, we're talking about institutional differences. When we start thinking about personal differences, that's a whole different area. So when we're thinking about what's important in terms of professional development, I can look at all the things. So if I use, for example, a new sport management professor at the University of North Florida, and what they're looking at to get started on the right foot, to work towards tenure and promotion and all of that, that's fine. But what about individual differences? The different roles that we're at in our given jobs. Maybe you're at a school and your job maybe it's very teaching heavy, and you find that you teach 5 or 6 classes a semester. Some people might have a job where they teach 1 class or maybe 2 a semester. Some people have to do a tremendous amount of research and publishing and presentation. Others, you're not encouraged really to do any. You might even be discouraged from engaging in scholarship because they want you to engage more in your, whatever, your teaching endeavors most likely, or possibly your service. Some people engage in a tremendous amount of service and others don't. I know with us, we have some clinical instructor positions. Service is a very tiny part of what's expected with that job. It's mainly a teaching job. So with that, when you're working towards things that are helping you, you want to work towards things that are enhancing your instructional efforts, not so much your scholarship or your service in that respect. A couple of cases and points just to kind of give some comparison is going with Jeff Briggs School and my own school. So for example, I'm at the University of North Florida. It's a mid-size, we have about 17,000 students. We're a part of the Florida SUS State University system. We're a public school in Jacksonville. We have what's called a CBL focus. We're a community-based learning focused institution. We currently have a Carnegie classification of being a community engaged institution. We're moving towards a trajectory, as they would say, of aspiring research 2 level institution. Athletically, we compete as an NCAA Division I program. We're a non-football school, but we compete in the Atlantic Sun Conference in Division I athletics. That's just kind of a nutshell overview of what the UNF profile is. We have a very large campus with a lot of, a lot of great wilderness around there, a lot of great natural resources and protected wetlands and things of that sort. Jeff comes from North Greenville University.
I'm here right now.
Okay, Jeff, you want to tell us a little bit about
Absolutely.
NGU?
Absolutely. North Greenville University is a Southern Baptist institution. We're one of 3 institutions in South Carolina, along with Anderson and Charleston Southern. And we compete in Division II athletics in the Conference Carolinas with 13 or 14 other faith-based institutions. And we have about 2,200 students between our 2 campuses. Our primary campus is a rural campus. We're about 20 minutes outside of Greenville, in the kind of at the base of the mountains, just below Asheville. And then we have a graduate school in Greer, which is a suburb of Greenville itself. We do have a PA program. That's one of our new caveats. But on campus, at the main campus, we have about 18 to 1,900 students. And actually, our sport management program is either the largest or second largest program on our campus, with between 150 and 180 majors. We generally have between 9 and 10% of the entire campus that studies with us across the 50-degree programs on campus. So we generally have always attracted a large volume of students. We graduate about 30 a year. But because we are a teaching institution and a heavily faith-based institution, kind of pointing back to what you just identified, we are not very research-minded, Jason. In fact, we are very service-minded and community-based. And so we as faculty are both assigned and encouraged to be heavily involved in the North Greenville community, but also into our local community, which would include the church community. So our faith-based affiliations, there's an expectation, strong expectation, that we're heavily involved in our home churches, our ministries per se, not just on the campus, but within the community. And so we don't have research requirements, but we are a teaching institution. So we teach a lot of classes. We do our own advising. Normally I'll have 50 to 80 advisees that I work with on a routine basis. And a lot of projects on campus to kind of promote the community base for the student body. So we put a lot of effort into kind of student engagement and our student services. So that's a little bit about our program. Our athletics department's fairly large. We have 20 teams that compete at the Division II level, including a men's volleyball program that competes at a D1 level. And we do recruit up to 550 student athletes. Unlike a lot of institutions, we give no full rides in athletics. We spread the money as much as possible. Because we're a private institution, we're very much tuition driven and mindful of student enrollment. So we do a lot of recruiting activities throughout the year, and faculty are required to be involved with recruiting activities to help support the bottom line of the institution. Thank you, Jason.
Absolutely. So there you can just kind of see with the kind of case in point, we're just describing 2 different types of institutions. We both have large sport management programs, for example. As Jeff mentioned, they have one of the largest, if not the largest, on their campus. We have about 300 students in ours. We're the largest in our college and one of the larger ones on our campus. But we have a lot of students, but it doesn't represent quite even the same percentage wise of what Jeff's students are there at NGU. But we have different our university steadily increasing the focus on scholarly engagement. Service is important, but it's of scholarship, teaching, and service, it's definitely the lowest of the 3 in terms of how it's emphasized for traditional faculty lines. But with that, really every school, I like to say every school has their own story to tell, and every program has their own story to tell. And that's where I think it's really important to kind of think about what we are as representing our program, but also thinking specifically about truly what is important to us as we think about engaging in impactful professional development activities. So when you think about that, the people representing this session, for example, we have maybe different career attributes, whatever the quote unquote level of where our career is. Are we just starting the cohort, maybe, if you will? Are we just starting out Are we about to retire, or are we somewhere in between? What are our professional goals? What are our day-to-day and ongoing responsibilities? Who are we as individuals? I talked in the earlier session I did today about personal branding. I love to talk about branding and application of personal brands. But when we think about what is our own personal brand, that's a big deal. And when we think about some of those considerations and we tie it back to the notion of understanding that professional development is of a great necessity, I think this slide gives us some things to think about, because us as faculty and possibly as administrators, we know what it's like to have to wear many hats, to juggle many responsibilities, to engage in things that sometimes might comprise the jobs of what some might think of many within our universities. We might serve the role of teacher, advisor, administrator, project developer, writing instructor, technology expert, event producer, fundraiser, marketer, club sponsor, and on and on and on and on. And these are all important roles. And we may wear several of these hats. Some of us may wear all of these hats. But whatever ones we do, we know that this ties to the concept of professional development. And there's ways that we can enhance things to make us a better teacher and a more effective advisor and a more impactful administrator, and so forth and so on. Jeff and I have done a pretty fair amount of work really over the last 2 or 3 years looking at professional development in a variety of different areas, mostly focused on the academic discipline of sport management. And a couple of years ago, we did a session at our accrediting body's annual conference, COSMA. I think we were in Baton Rouge that year. And with that one, we came up with what we call J&J's top 10 professional development recommendations. And for time reasons, I just wanted to share this. This was a handout that we gave to the group then, but just wanted to go over these a little bit just to give y'all some examples of some of the stuff we're talking about, and maybe encourage you to think about some things that you could engage with that could be meaningful professional development activities. For example, you can join one or more professional associations, whether they're local, state, national, or international. You can serve perhaps as a reviewer for abstracts, maybe for proposals, for conference proposals for something like C-Skills, or maybe for article submissions for various other organizations, conferences, journals, or what have you. Participate in a panel discussion at a conference, workshop, or meeting. Engage in scholarly writing and publication. Maybe engage in a book club or participate in some type of lead-in online presentation or training sessions, such as webinars, podcasts, or other online training. You can serve your public area by providing resources to any number of various local agency groups or businesses. Some of you may find that you're a valuable resource within local youth sport organizations, for example. Maybe the YMCA is a great area that you can partner with, or they might even be dependent on you, your students, and your programs from your represented academic disciplines to be able to provide a great resource such as that. Work with other entities to help create new products or services, or gather or share or analyze information. Partner with different organizations to be able to put on an ongoing event. Engage in a project or activity. And this could include anything from putting on golf tournaments and 5K runs to any number of things. These are great things to get to learn and engage. They're good teaching tools for educators. Students learn a lot through this experiential learning of learning by doing. Or maybe even just create different activities like small seminars, workshops, or other things where you can engage with other professionals or other educators in your respective areas. There's a lot of things to think about, and we can come back and talk about some of those if we have some time at the end. But really, I just kind of wanted to kind of end the note here of thinking about networking and mentorship. We talked about a lot of things with professional development. We could go on and on really about these things, but a key part of engaging in meaningful professional development is to be mindful of the notion of a network and think about what your network is and how you can enhance your networking skills and build a stronger network. I'm a person that likes to be what's called a connector. I like to connect people with people and people with organizations and people with opportunities and all these things together. The goal is to connect folks together to work for the greater good. And by building a network and utilizing that network and helping make each other better, that can be great. And part of our network can be the aspect of either mentoring others or having a mentor ourselves. And in terms of education, it can be great to have more seasoned educators, for example, maybe help mentor you in teaching. Or maybe if you are embarking more in scholarly activities like writing or public speaking or whatever, you might be able to engage in mentorship and that. We can benefit obviously from a great network and a great mentor-mentee relationship in so many areas, even outside of our own professional lives, of course. So that's just something to think about. In summary, we talked about professional development, the importance of engagement in professional development, kicked around a lot of different ways to be involved. Faith integration is something that hopefully we're able to value, see, and apply to our professional development activities. And, last but not least, don't forget the value of mentorship and networking. So if we have any time left, we'd love to either field questions or just have an open discussion if there's anything that spoke to anybody, or if there's any questions or recommendations, suggestions, or anything above.
Yeah, we have about 10 minutes for questions. If you want to end your share screen, that way you can kind of see everybody and give anyone there a chance to kind of pop in and ask questions.
Absolutely.
So I have a quick question from while others may be thinking. So I'm a graduate student. I also teach at Johnson University, but I'm also a PhD student there. And so for any students who may be listening to this now or may kind of go back and listen to it later from the recording, what do you suggest students, young professionals that are kind of getting started in this professional development sector? Obviously finances, right? That's a big issue, is being able to do that. Do you have any kind of good budget friendly ideas or kind of tips, tricks, things like that?
Yeah, I think that, obviously it helps to think about where we are individually and really what motivates us. Now, obviously, if let's say you're working on your doctorate and your goal is to either get a job as a teacher or further your current role if you have it as an educator, or maybe you're in a temporary job and you're looking for one with more permanent, so there's a lot of different things that we can think about from where we're at. It may be we have the job we want, we're getting our education to further solidify things, and I just want to be the best teacher I can be. I can remember when I was a PhD student and I was teaching classes, the endless hours I spent preparing lessons and just going because I wanted to just do the best job I could. I was afraid somebody would ask me a tough question in the back corner of the room and I wouldn't know the answer, and I would lose any credibility I'd hopefully build up with my students. As I got a lot older, I realized I get asked questions a lot that I don't know. Thankfully, I can rely on Google or Quick Wit sometimes to help me answer those, but I really truly do want to help people get the answers that they need, and it's fine not to have those answers. But yeah, so I think it really helps. Obviously, if we already have a job, that can help define some of these things, as opposed to we're looking for a job or we're looking for a different job, perhaps. We want to be mindful a lot of times. I really see it as twofold. We want to be mindful of what the institution expects or demands, but we also need to be mindful of our own personal goals and interests and things that will really best benefit us individually. For example, when I do scholarly writings and stuff, that's a big deal at my university. I need to hone in a lot of time on that. Certainly I did when I was going up for tenure and promotion or promotion to full professor. That was a key component. So I spent more time on that than if I were at a university that maybe could care less if I engaged in that, didn't expect me to, or maybe, like I said before, some places don't even want you to. So that can make it a little different. Yeah, certainly money, as you mentioned, is a challenge, and we have to make the most with what we have to work with on that sometimes. So whether that's our own personal finances or seeing what, and universities can help out a lot, but it may depend. They may not fund for you to go to a national conference that costs $500 to register. The hotel's $200 a night, and you got to fly. They may not give you $3,000 to go do a presentation at a conference in San Diego, but they might. But if you can't go to San Diego and spend 2,000 or 3,000, maybe you can go to an area conference, or there might be some other things that are a little more local level. Again, I think it's always good to be mindful of what you do have to work with. And sometimes there's different funding mechanisms. I know for us, things dried up a lot over the last year or so. We weren't allowed to do travel. There wasn't anywhere really to travel to. But thankfully, we had virtual conferences and options for virtual conferences, like the virtual option here with C-Skills. And that can be very good because registering for a virtual conference is much more affordable than hotel rooms, mileage, or plane tickets, a lot of those things. So it really truly does matter on the individual things. But I think it's really good to be mindful if let's just say you're at a job that you want to climb the ranks there at your job. It really truly is important to be mindful of what the institutional missions, values, and expectations are. And in particular, look at what your supervisors, those that will be evaluating you, or the ones that might have say-so in promotion or tenure options or whatever things might be ahead of you, to kind of see, because you might think that it's really important to write a textbook, for example, and others might think that's not very important at all. Or you might find that writing a textbook is super important, and if you edit a book and involve different educators on an important topic, and you're able to learn from each other and all that might be super valuable. It really depends so much.
Jay, let me add to that. I think that the overall goal of the faculty member, if their desire is to remain a faculty member for 30 or 40 years, obviously their professional development plans might vary tremendously from someone who sees themselves moving into administration or moving up in management, or maybe even sees themselves advancing into higher level administration or management. So certainly what an individual's personal kind of career path might be. And obviously, as faith-led men and women, we're relying on God. And sometimes he's given us the vision for what that looks like. And sometimes, we still aren't certain of that. But for myself personally, I knew as a businessman, I was always interested in management and leadership. So the teaching side was far less of interest to me than it was on the management and leadership side. So I always sought professional development that led to my personal evolution as a businessman, particularly in the areas of finance, which is where I've specialized, but also in leadership. And then I found those lent real well to developing programs and building degree programs and recruiting students and raising money and all that. And all those things that your provosts and your vice presidents want to see, those kind of things really lent well. But that was driven by my desires to be more of a program administrator. And so Jason's right, whatever your personal career goals, you'll find your PD, professional development, should meet those and might vary tremendously. And then I would always add in there, as faith-based men and women, it is apropos for us to continue to grow in our spiritual and our cognitive and our overall personal faith. Being able to mentor young men and women and lead them to the Lord and disciple them through our disciplines. You have to be growing in that to be useful for God where he has us right now. And so a stagnant relationship and a stagnant faith will actually hinder your advancement, particularly if you want to be an effective witness for God, whether you're at a secular or a faith-based institution.
Well said. Well said. Any other questions, comments, thoughts?
All right. Thank you both so much for taking the time to present with us. We appreciate it. For those kind of continuing, our next presentation will be at 5:10. So you guys got a 10-minute break, and then we'll be back in this room for that. So thank you so much.